Good day everyone. So today's video has actually been inspired by Mr. Mtash himself. Sorry for rendering you so badly. And in one of his little clips he sort of said, well, here are my real thoughts on someone like I Want to Lose Gaming. So what I've decided to do for today is actually speak a bit about the different content creation styles in Genshin Impact, and for that purpose I selected obviously I Want to Lose Gaming here, Tenten, Zajef, and which last one, Sekapoko, for this purpose. So I'm just going to talk about the different content styles that each one of them represents. This is something that I could have used any other content creator here for. These are just the people that I sort of picked. In hindsight, I should have probably also picked CV to, get a bit of women representation here. But alas, we've got the gentleman here to represent it, and we'll just sort of go through that through this list. From my perspective, you guys know the sort of content we do on this channel. Goofy content, we do a lot of spiral abyss runs, a lot of practical things. It's all about the practical overworld and utilities of characters. So in my world, damage is just one vector of the many sorts of aspects that makes a character, and hence I don't really generally focus too much on it. We obviously play everything that is meta, everything that is anti-meta, everything that's in between, and everything that no one else has even thought of. So that is my perspective and the sort of style that I sort of choose. But let me speak a bit about these different styles that these guys represent. And please note, this is not an attack on any one of them. This is not even meant to be that. This is just a discussion on the different styles. And then at the end, I'll give you my sort of general thoughts on theory crafting as well. So let's start off with someone like I Want to Lose. So I Want to Lose Gaming, Tonito, big showcases. Very often what I find interesting about their content is, as you guys can see on screen, let me just make it
less support.
Oops, let me just make it bigger. And just put it on mute. What I find interesting is stuff like the gimmicks, the creative stuff, all the ways in which the guys manipulate the Genshin Impact damage equation, or they do some sort of fancy trick with Amber to I don't know, get like a huge amount of damage. That's why I like watching someone like I Want to Lose Gaming, Tonito, and related like sort of big nuke showcase content. It's not about the damage numbers, it's all about the how they got to it. You guys also know that like most nuke showcases are literally just one trick ponies. You put it into a spiral burst and well, it suddenly loses value. As regarding the other sorts of styles of content that someone like I Want to Lose makes, I think most of his stuff is fine. I think it's a bit unrelatable because you do have someone that's only got like C6 characters, also like I have, and I understand very clearly that most people can't really interact with it, even if you do define stuff like damage potentials and here's your characters versus theoretical max and stuff like that. It doesn't really mean as much, and I think as such the conclusions don't always hit as strong as they should. I think a lot of what he represents is more like the end point of Genshin Impact, and I've spoken about this a lot on the channel. If you as an F2P plan on getting constellations over a period of 5 years, content like this can give you a very good idea of the sort of things that you can look out for, or the sorts of things that you might want to sort of not want to do. So you might say, well, I would really like a gun you C6, but most of the other constellations might not really be worth it, as opposed to getting a C2 or free Raiden, for instance. And I think that's what channels like this can really just sort of show you in a very almost like casual sense. And yeah, that's just what I like about his content and so on. People like Tenten, and this is not just Tenten specifically, they're the sort of content creators that you agree with and then you don't agree with, and then you agree with, and then you listen again. It's like yes and no, yes, no, yes, yes, no, no. So obviously the whole primo gem per value sort of arguments and so on is very important for a lot of people. I think it does help give people that have no idea what they're doing a very good, a genuinely like a very good perspective on how to approach the game. So yeah, I do like that about him. I do like the fact that you've got a system and that you try to be very consistent in that system. Whether we always agree, we don't, it's not the point. It's more like how did we get to those conclusions, and very often there's some really cool things that he does say and so on. So yeah, I do like this more sort of discussion, the primo gem for value type of content. And Zajef is the type of person that I want people like Shadow. or like most free-to-play players that cannot do math to watch, so that they can learn the basics of Genshin Impact and understand why there are certain ways of thinking about things. Very often we speak about the theory crafting side in Genshin. I'll speak about that a bit later as well. But without a solid foundation for knowing why things are the way they are, without having someone that can just sort of take you through something like a bit of a yellow character review, a lot of players seem to just do things arbitrarily, and this is the sort of structured content that you can actually get. So yeah, channels like him are very good for that, and then you get people like Sekopoko, which is he's like the he's like the type of person that I just sort of put in the background, and then I just sort of run domains, be like, yes, I agree, don't agree, but it's like it's very pleasant type of content. It's very down to earth content. It's very sort of almost like at face value. So Sekopoko will very often test things, even if you don't agree with his testing methodology. He'll give things a very realistic look. I find that he's got I know people might not agree, but I think he's one of those few people that actually doesn't come in when they do a character review without any predetermined biases. He doesn't really, he looks at things for the face value that they are. And if you look at his Kokomi videos in particular, he was one of the few people that I saw that recognized the multi sort of role utility that this character provided, and which we obviously covered way back when. And that's what I sort of really like about his content style. So yeah, that is all of the content styles sort of reviewed and what these guys represent. And now my honest thoughts on Genshin Impact theory crafting in general. So here we are at the hub of theory crafting, Kuching Mains, and let me just get a few things out of the way. Look, it's a very good resource. The guys have obviously done a lot of work over lots of months, giving us like very basic introductory guides to all of the characters, frame data, obscure text. There's lots of cool things that they've got going. So I've got nothing really, I think they've done a great job in terms of the community effort. Where I do find them lacking is the fact that the theory crafting side is a bit weak for me from a mathematical perspective. And I think nothing can demonstrate this better than if you understand that Genshin Impact is based off of a lot of RNG and lots of random elements, and there is no stochastic framework for simulating and comparing the distribution of this. So in other words, what do I mean? Basically, you've got Team 1. Your Team 1, in very simple terms, has got its own build, weapons, rotations, and sort of practical adjustments that you might want to make as a theory crafter. What you should be doing is taking all of this, run some sort of simulation engine, and then build yourself like a damage distribution, which you can see here on the right hand side. The fact that we don't have this, or we have like healing distributions or any other sort of utilities, is very telling of the efforts that the guys have done. So I do think at the minimum we need distributions. We need to see the spread of outcomes from using a certain team, and sort of what happens when you map all of these complex levers into this distribution. And think about this: if you can map all these complexities and interactions into an output like this, then we can start asking some interesting questions. But what if I instead use Team 2 with different builds, but the same weapons, but at different rotations and different adjustments? Well, you know, I can actually get a second distribution. Now it's like, how am I comparing the damage distributions over time? Well, this is the part where theory crafting is supposed to be theory crafting. We should discuss things like stochastic dominance. What sort of distribution criteria are we going to use? Are we only going to use like sort of the end distribution over time? In other words, the longitudinal distribution, or are we going to look at some cross-sectional variations as well? These are the actual basic statistical things that is not answered. Instead, what the guys are doing is they're going into their spreadsheets, they've got all their little tables and artifacts, and then they sort of, you know, write up the stuff. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing it like that, and sort of using that as a sort of stepping stone to introduce people to theory crafting. But even this, as complicated, and don't try to understand this, I explained this in a previous video, even this is not good enough. So what is good enough? Well, what I would envisage is a proper environment where we detail all of the artifacts, all of the sets, everything, not in a spreadsheet, but in a proper database, JSON files, whatever sort of format you want to put it in. And once you've got all your data sets and stuff in, you have a very programmatic interface towards constructing simulations. And then you can use this as the backbone of for creating your own server clusters and running simulations, putting in front ends and so on. And basically, as a sort of quick demo, you would want theory crafters to actually eventually sit with their audience, and instead of fiddling with spreadsheets and looking up, oh, what's this little value on the Genshin wiki and whatever, you want someone to give you like a bit of a clean look. So something like from Genshin sim dot weapons dot, well, let's just use the weapon builder. Let's import our weapons module or our weapon module as WP, and now we can say, well, weapons dot let's just look up something. Let's just look up a weapon, the Favonius Warbow, since Yellen is sort of like popular. You can see here, boom, I've got my ID. I don't need to go and look it up somewhere. In fact, look at what my instructions tell me. Well, go and create your own weapon. Do it. You just be like weapon.set, weapon, and then I can just sort of give the little ID here that I've got, and automatically now I've got everything that I need on my weapon. And if you do things like these properly, you can answer so many questions. You can change the attribute of the my weapon. Whoops, let me just do it like this. You can see there's like so many things that I've currently sort of coded in, max damage and so on. There's like very complicated types here, frame delays, interpolations, all sorts of stuff. But you could set like the RNG generation, for instance, on your Favonius, if you don't have like the full refinement. There's like so many progression schemas. You could put in like teams, like team compositions, like a default team, or you could use like a default user as well to do damage. There's like so much you can do from a programmatic perspective that you can't do by just fiddling around in little spreadsheets pretending to be smart. And I wish the guys at Kaching Mains can move away from that paradigm and give us a proper Genshin sim package. The one I've got here is my own one that I've written, so no, you guys cannot get it, unless you pay me, of course. But yeah, the point is you want to create weapon types. You want to be able to adjust things, being able to say stuff like, what happens if I change a statistic? You want to do stuff like, let's say, simulate some, let's see if the, there we go, the ID gives it us, simulate some damage. The number of sims that I want is about 10,000. Yes, do give us the stats. And then boom, it's generated. It tells us, oh, this is the mean damage that we're doing with the sort of default weapon character and whatever settings that I've got here. This is the standard deviation. And now we can do the stuff that I said. Well, let's go and, oh, what am I typing here? Now let's generate a distribution, and there you go. There it is. I can see the sort of distribution of the damage. And now when I start doing things like setting up a new weapon, I can compare two different weapon types and so on. This is actually one of the extra things that I want to add to this module, is something like you'll see it's not here yet, but something like a compare, where you can just then pass in another instance of a weapon, and then boom, it can give you the appropriate stats. So this is what you'd want from theory crafting, just as a bit of a short demo for those of you that are interested in programming and so on. And this is, I think, the basic standard that we need. Because a lot of the times what people are getting is they're getting a single number. They look at a single number, 50,000, and then somehow they're starting to pick, oh yeah, this weapon is 110% or 80% below. That is all stupid. You need the distribution. And if there is no distribution, awesome, then you can use that method. But if there's any bit of variability, you've got to take it into account. You've got to map all these certain outcomes and inputs and all the levers and get to that final distribution. And this is one cool way of doing it, being able to take, if you're a streamer or a theory crafter, being able to stream this and say, ooh, but what happens if I change this on the weapon? Or I assume that there's like an input lag, and we can push this input lag and player error in, and we can adjust and account for all these. This is like the real fun stuff. So you might be saying, well, you're just bluffing, you don't really know about any of this. Well, I can promise you this is my work, for those of you that are interested. For a living, I write stochastic systems. I write optimization engines. There's a recent article that I've been given by my colleagues. This, if you can understand this, awesome. Let me know in the comment section. But this is the type of work we do in practice. We move multiple billions of dollars worth of money using jump diffusions. This is very relevant for like pricing your barrier options and some of your like some of the other option pricing models we've got. But the real math we use in the real world is not some simple arithmetic sort of counting and so on. The real stuff is stuff like what you can see here on screen. If you don't understand it, don't worry. No, this is pretty complicated and specialized. But when I get from this field and from actually simulating real world systems, and I come back to Genshin, for me the standard that I'm used to and what I'm seeing from Kaching mains from theory crafting is just worlds apart. So from my perspective at least, they can do better. How can they do better? Well, here it is. This is an example of how you can do better. And if you don't like this, well, tough luck. Then I honestly suggest upskilling your education and so on. So yeah, that is my honest thoughts on the theory crafting. Great resource. There are a lot of things I don't agree with, especially like how these guys evaluate constellations. It's absolutely badly done. For the most part, if you're just a casual person, you don't know a lot of maths, this is a cool guide. But do you need to take this seriously from a maths perspective? No, because it can be done so much better. And that is it. That is all that I wanted to say on the content creation styles and theory crafting. If you've got any specific questions, let me know in the comment section down below.